This is the fun part. We are live. Hi, everybody. Give me just 1 second while I share this to our other page. But, Gabby, why don't you tell us what you've been up to in January a while?
I thought you were going to say today. Today was a busy
that
day,
too.
girl. We're a little late because of me. I was just doing our 9 a.m. show, and we had some Girl Scouts in. They made fantastic cookie treats. It was with their lemon cookie and vanilla chocolate. And, it doesn't sound like a combination that would work, but trust me, it worked, and it was so stinking good. So I had a couple bites, and that's why I'm late. But we're definitely going to have more after this, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Especially perfect treat for a good book.
Oh, my gosh, exactly. And I was going to say, the weather this past month, and it's the longest month ever, first of all.
Yes,
January, right?
I agree.
It's never ending.
No.
For some reason. But
it is tomorrow.
Uh-huh. And we've had all this, time to read and relax and just kind of stay cozy with the snow that we finally got around here.
I feel like that's pretty much all I've done in January is read.
I
That's
love that.
all I remember. Looking back, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I did other things, but I just recently got into this one book series. Recommendation from Mel, one of our other coworkers. It's A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it, but it's so good. It's amazing. Highly recommend. We were joking that we started our own personal book club. A couple of us here at the station, yeah. So we've just been kind of trading books back and forth. So
I love that. Okay,
yeah.
So we announced our new book for this month. We're saving that till the end of this podcast, though, because we want to dive into January's pick.
Yes, we absolutely do. And if you don't remember, January's pick was Living Quarters by Adrienne. It's a collection of poems. And yeah, so take us away, Gabby.
All right. Well, my first question for you, Kayleigh, is poetry is supposed to evoke emotion. How did this book make you feel? What did this book make you feel?
So kind of a lot. There are a lot of poems. When we talked to the author, she sort of said she hopes that this is a book of poems for everybody because it's kind of just poems about life. So she talks about grief and her hometown, or not her hometown, but where she lives now, Carlisle. She talks about just all sorts of things. And the cool thing about this book is that, it's called Living Quarters, so you might be able to guess, but it's sort of modeled after a home. So yeah, it's a lot of those things. And it's also I don't know quite how to describe it, but a lot of the poems reminded me of that feeling that you get when you're don't feel quite right in your skin, when you're just vaguely uncomfortable or a little bit self-conscious, that sort of thing. So again, I don't really know how to describe that, but I feel that's, again, part of the beauty of poetry is it makes you feel things.
That is so interesting that it made you feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, when I even just go on TikTok and sometimes see different quotes that really get a feeling from you, it's so unique and really cool that they have the power to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Words can make you feel a lot of things, but it's really cool that even just so few words, especially in a poem when it's just, 3 words to a line or something, you're wow, I'm crying.
Yeah, so that had to be different, reading in pieces kind of versus chapters that bring you to the next level. Were these kind of all on their own or did they all kind of intertwine?
So they were all on their own, but Adrienne actually told us that when she was writing this, this is a book that sort of fell together. She was just writing these poems and then she was like, I think I have a collection here, actually. Yeah, so they're all sort of different, but they're in groups by, theme, which we'll talk a little bit more about later.
Oh, okay. I like the tease there. Okay, so what is your opinion on poetry, and what did the author say?
So I think that poetry is, a beautiful medium. I think it's difficult, which is what I would also think that a lot of people would say. So I asked Adrienne about that. It's what would you say to, people who are I just don't get poetry. Poetry is too hard. I don't understand it. And she was like, I would say, try, basically, because she sort of equated it to reading fiction. And she was like, when people read fiction, they might pick up a book and say, oh, well, this isn't the book for me. I'm going to try this book. But she was like, people often don't, give poetry that same, I don't know what the word is, but
that chance.
Chance. Yeah, effort, consideration. Yeah. So she was like, if you pick up a book of poems and you find that you're not connecting with it, it's not making sense to you, pick up another one. Keep trying. And she was like, it really kind of hurts that, a lot of people's introduction to poetry is in the classroom where they feel like it's right or wrong. And that's not what literature and poetry and writing is. So I thought that was a really good point, honestly. I had never really thought of it that way. I personally probably wouldn't have picked up a book of poems before this, but, with her saying that, I was like, you're kind of right. And I told her, too, I was like, when I was reading your book, I found myself immediately, trying to, wrest meaning from it. These poems, they're trying to tell me something, And I, kind of had to remind myself, yes, they might be trying to tell me something, but first I can just enjoy them, like read it through once, maybe twice, enjoy it, and then if I really want to, it can delve in there.
Yeah, deep dive into it. That's kind of a good lesson about life too, isn't it? Like
right?
every experience, just take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, take a deep breath.
Read into it
so
ridiculously. Okay, I got another one for you.
Okay.
Let's see here. Oh. Can you please read a poem?
Yes.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay? This is Adrienne Sue's poem, Grief.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of people will resonate with this one.
Exactly. And that's kind of why I picked this one, because I was thinking about, what we were talking about. Like, a lot of people think that poetry is inaccessible and that sort of thing. But with a topic like grief, everybody knows what that's like. So I was going to read this poem, and we can talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
So we have Grief. Stray dog that neither departs nor agrees to be adopted. It stands in rain and mud beneath the yew, sometimes willing to eat, unready to be touched. Where it spends the intervening days, where it sleeps, who its associates are, remain unknown, but it's made the semblance of a home on the welcome mat. I won't summon animal control, because this is one animal not to be controlled. I know from the face. I know from the way it walks off, it has somewhere to go. It likes to be lonely, hungry, cold. It would rather imagine a warmer, softer life than live one, because then there'd be nowhere left to travel. I make sure not to plan for it, even when going out of town. Neither family nor property, it seeks to dwell with me, not in a home, but on a home's periphery.
That's good.
Yeah. And I thought, just, the synonym between grief and, the stray dog, and, you kind of feel bad for the stray dog, but, yeah. I also was a little bit curious. This is my, English major in me. I was like, she mentions a yew tree. Let's see. So I just looked that up before our discussion here. Mm-hmm. And a yew tree actually symbolizes death and reincarnation and that sort of thing. So there's even that deeper, that's sort of the analysis, you can read it once, enjoy it, read it twice. It's oh, yew, I wonder if that means anything. Yew tree, reincarnation.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask, too, because I kind of was like, what is that? When I read it, heard you read it.
Yeah. I actually still have the page up. I can tell you. It says,
yeah, bring it up.
An evergreen tree, the yew is symbolic of everlasting life and rebirth. It came to symbolize death and resurrection. So, yeah, I thought that was really cool. And it really, like I said, this poem really just kind of resonated with me, because I think everything that she writes is true. You can't really plan for it. It doesn't really go away. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but it's never gone,
Like a stray dog. Yeah, that is so good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that one too.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So did they all kind of feel like that deep sense of something? It kind of felt like almost like longing?
Yeah. I would say there is a lot of emotion in these poems. I forget the name of one of them, but I'm, again, making a guess and analyzing here, but it sounds to me like she's talking about a lover or a husband leaving, but it's really interesting because she kind of juxtaposes it with just a regular doctor's appointment, and she's it's sort of how this is all hitting her as she's just at this doctor's appointment. Right. And again, I think that's just a very human experience.
Yep. It's so how life works.
Yeah.
Things hit you when you don't want them to hit you, when you least expect it, when you're busy in the middle of other things.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that one. Thank you for sharing it. That was really good. And especially as a dog lover, that just got my attention right away. And then when you really think about it, you're just like, wow.
There is actually a poem in here called Ownership that made me think of you, because it's about adopting a dog. I was thinking about reading that, and then I was like, I don't want Gabby to cry on the stream.
Oh, gosh.
So.
But I'm going to have to check that out.
Yes, you should.
So bookmark the page for me.
Okay,
and I'll read it at home just in case I get emotional. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so can you talk to me a little bit about the structure of the book and how it's laid out? I know we touched on this, but I was curious if it's just a bunch of poems or if they kind of intertwine.
Yes. So if you can sort of see from the cover here, it's, sort of blueprint-esque. Yeah. So basically this is sort of put into sections like the rooms of a home. So I'm not entirely sure what all the rooms are. I have my guesses. But I think that one is the kitchen, one is the bedroom, one is the garden, and I forgot what the last one is. I know I wrote it down. But it's just really cool because they sort of twine around those themes, even when it's not quite there, but there's still a little bit of a connection to be made. She has some poems about growing and fruits and that sort of thing, and garden, obviously.
Right, yeah. Okay, cool. I like that.
Yeah, grief, I think, was part of what I think, and I could be wrong, it might not be garden, but grief was part of that section that I think is from the garden, things growing, things dying. So, it's not necessarily gardening, but...
rebirth, yeah.
Yeah, the symbolism there.
Wow.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
So Kayleigh is the one that's the master reader behind all of these.
I love it.
I'm trying to read, but I'm just not as quick as she is. So I like learning from you and finding out the different quirks of each one, because this sounds like one that I could get through because it
Yeah.
seems shorter relatively. It's obviously poems, so you could stop and like maybe read more the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the really nice thing about reading this too, is like it, has those like natural pauses where each section is. It's 4 sections, and each section I think is 14 poems. So like it's not overwhelming. It's just it's kind of like the perfect little bite-sized read, and then you can put it down and come back.
Yeah, I like that. The bite-sized read.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So can we touch on this month's book?
Yes, absolutely. So for this upcoming month, February, we're going to be reading African Americans of Harrisburg. It's a book talking about like the history and how Harrisburg became sort of the melting pot that it is today, and all of the contributions that African Americans had on the city, and all of the wonderful things that they did. So we thought it'd be a really good read for Black History Month, and just to learn a little bit more about the area.
Perfect. I got to take a quick peek when we had our
Awesome.
librarian Theodore in from Lancaster.
Theodore!
He's awesome,
He is
and
awesome.
he knows so much, so knowledgeable. And we were just kind of flipping through, and they have so many amazing pictures in this book too.
Oh, really? I'm
Yes.
excited.
Yeah, and I just love the history. And
Yeah.
it's so cool that we're talking about what happened right here and
Yeah.
kind of how things have moved forward and progressed since then, which is so important
Definitely.
and just so fitting for Black History Month.
yeah, I can't wait.
I know, I'm looking forward to that one too.
Yay.
Well, Kayleigh, thank you as always. I
Thank
love doing this
you.
with you.
Yay! I love doing this with you too. It's so good to have you.
Yes, and I think we're going to be talking to that author sometime soon.
Yes, I hope so. We'll be able to talk to somebody, hopefully. At least, I think the African American Museum of Harrisburg was listed as an author too, so maybe we could
Great.
even talk to them.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
looking
excited.
forward to that. Kayleigh keeps it local. So all of these stories that we talk about, they are by local artists, local organizations, local authors, and I just think that's so important.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we'll see you guys next